Welcome everybody today to our fourth webinar in our Park Perspective series. My name is Rachel and I'm your moderator for today's webinar. So just a few notes on the technical side of things. We really want this to be like an interactive session. We want everybody to be able to be chatting and sharing knowledge and ideas. So if you want to participate, if you have any questions or any comments at any point throughout the webinar, we're going to use the chat function. So there's the chat function. If you hover your mouse on the screen, you will see a little icon that says chat. And there you can pop in any questions or comments you have as we go. And the panelists will be using this function too. So today's session is being recorded and it's going to be available on Park People's website for future reference. So yeah, I'd like to kind of test the chat function actually. So if you can hear me and can see me, could you pop in maybe the chat window and let us know who you are and where you're joining us from, because it's just kind of interesting to see where we have our participants joining us from. So you could maybe just say where you're coming in from. So we've got participants from East Richmond, from the TRCA in Toronto, from the city of Mississauga, Okotoks, which is, I believe, on the West Coast. We have Nawal from Flemington Park, Credit Valley. We have so many, it's fantastic. North Vancouver, Toronto Parks and Trees, Drummondville, Quebec, Bienvenue, University of Toronto, Parks Canada, City of Toronto, Grand Prairie, very exciting, great. All right, so London, so yes, thank you for everybody for being here. So today, I'm speaking to you from Park People, so I'll just give you a little brief intro about Park People. So we're organizing these webinars to support people to help them activate the power of parks and improve quality of life in cities across Canada. When communities get involved, parks get better. Today, 86% of Canadians live in cities. This rapid densification is set to continue. The potential of parks to offset many of the challenges of urban life makes parks more relevant now than ever before. Parks are the place where we gather to play, to exercise, to relax, and to connect with each other and with nature. You can feel the energy of a vibrant park reverberate across a whole neighborhood. You can see and measure the benefits of a vibrant park system on an entire city's health, economy, ecology, and social well-being. This is the power of parks, and it is created by people like yourselves who are committed to make a real, lasting difference in our communities and cities. So I'd love to introduce today's panelists. So our webinar topic today is Parks as a Safe Landing Place for Newcomers, a look at MABELLEarts' approach to community arts. And we are so lucky to have with us today three wonderful panelists. So Leah Houston is the Artistic Director of MABELLEarts. Leah has been cultivating a dynamic, multidisciplinary, community-based arts practice for almost 15 years, incorporating public art, installation, and performance with public space transformation, working with people of all ages and backgrounds. Leah has created and produced many community arts events and led a number of artists to create new work that tells the ordinary, extraordinary stories of our lives. Leah has worked with diverse communities, including in Ontario's Muskoka region, Dhaka, Bangladesh, and Kathmandu, Nepal. Welcome, Leah. We also have Maggie Hutchison. Maggie Hutchison is the arts consultant and Welcome to This Place Toolkit author. She is a community-engaged artist, educator, curator, and consultant. Over the past 15 years, she has collaborated with other artists and Toronto residents to animate oral histories of war, gentrification, homelessness, and migration. Maggie has worked with a range of arts and non-arts organizations, including the CBC, Jumbly's Theatre, MABELLEarts, Toronto Arts Foundation, and York University. Welcome to Maggie. And we also have on the line from Winnipeg, we have the great honor of having Val Vint joining us. Val is an Indigenous knowledge keeper and artist. Born in Winnipegosis, Manitoba, Val draws from a background of photography, ceramics, painting, engineering, design, theater, performance art, music, travel, and work with other Indigenous peoples. Val's present direction is influenced by her heritage as her genealogy stems from community artists and activists known throughout Manitoba's history. Her greatest accomplishment is her children who carried forward both artistic and humanitarian efforts to benefit their community and who are raising her grandchildren proud of their Métis heritage, expressing this through their theatrical art, sport, and community involvement. Welcome to Val. So without further ado, I'm going to pass the mic over to Leah. So let's make sure she's unmuted. All right.
Oh, sorry, I have to be unmuted. Hi, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. This is a really exciting opportunity. It's something I've actually never done before, and I'm thrilled. Thanks to Park people so much for having us here today, and thanks so much to Maggie and Val for joining me. I'm going to tell you a little bit about MABELLEarts. MABELLEarts is a community engaged arts organization in residence in a high density public housing complex in Etobicoke, which is an inner suburb of Toronto. For the last 11 years, we've been working with thousands of community members living there to transform a small park in the center of the neighborhood, which was at the time a neglected piece of land owned by Toronto Community Housing, but also a very vital throughway for people living in the neighborhood as they went to school or to the TTC. So in the past 11 years, we've had the great joy of working with dozens of professional artists, designers, and as well as thousands of community members to transform that park. And in the process of doing that, we started thinking about and being invited to think about ways we could bring that work and sensibility to other places. So in 2016, thanks to the support of the Ontario Trillium Foundation, we launched a satellite project in a neighborhood called the West Mall, focused on a park called Broadacres Park, which you can see in the photograph here. And then through that experience, really started to pin down a way of bringing our work to other places. You know, at Mabel, we've had the incredible luxury of time. We've been there for 11 years. And so to think through how we might engage in projects that are much shorter in time was a really interesting challenge. And so the project I'm going to be telling you about today, Welcome to This Place, is a response to that challenge on a national scale. So thinking about how MABELLEarts might play a role nationally in bringing a kind of arts engagement and community art to, in this case, 4 other cities across the country: Vancouver, Winnipeg, Montreal, and Halifax. For this project, what we did, which I actually is one of my favorite things about the project, we were able to collaborate across disciplines and sectors in a way that I think was kind of unique. So, for instance, partnering really closely with settlement agencies, with small arts organizations, with YAMCA, really meant that each project played out very differently and aligned with its unique location. And I know Val is going to tell you a little bit more about how that played out in terms of Winnipeg, but certainly that's something that I thought was really interesting. And for Welcome to This Place, the goal of our project was to explore parks and public spaces in an urban setting as a place where newcomers to Canada would feel a sense of welcoming and arrival, and also a place where they would meet and get to know more established Canadians, including Indigenous peoples. So that was the kind of main framework from which we approached the project. And something that's always been very important at MABELLEarts is offering opportunities for people to do things together, especially people who may have preconceived notions about one another. So we're not sitting across from each other in a high intensity meeting situation. We're making something together out of paper mache. And through that fun, getting to know one another. So I think the spark of that really lived through the Welcome to This Place project, and I'm excited for you to learn more about it. Thanks so much. Oh, it's my turn still? Yeah. Sorry, I was checking the time. And it feels so weird to have you all there, but I can't talk to you. I know that we're going to talk, and really, I guess something I should have said from the beginning is we're anxious to talk. We want to talk. We want to hear your voices. Val is going to talk a bit about Winnipeg as a case study. It's my great pleasure to introduce you to Val Vint, an Indigenous knowledge keeper and artist doing incredible work in Winnipegosis. and Val is now become a great friend to me and a great partner in MABELLEarts. So thanks so much, Val. Val's going to speak for, I think, 8 minutes, and then we're going to see a video about the Winnipeg project, but please do share your questions and comments. That's really why we're here.
Okay. My turn now, Leah?
Yes. Oh no, the echo.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this place. And I want to thank Leah and Maggie and Super Tech Woman, Rachel, and all the other people who put this work very, very hard to put this project together. In my view, it's an absolutely wonderful and needed project on our land right now. And to talk about Winnipeg a little bit, there were some gatherings held there in community public spaces, in small parks, in kind of the inner city of Winnipeg. Those, in particular, the one park, Chief Grizzly Bear Park, well, all the parks, there was community consultation. There was also a consultation with Indigenous people who know about medicines. So particular plants were placed in these parks for public usage. Part of it, and also those plants are named, and there's a little, so you can find information about them, and they're named in the languages of Cree, Ojibwe, Michif, and in Canadian also as well. So people can then take the names and look them up and find out what those plants are used for. But we also did a walkabout in many of those little community spaces and talked about what was there, what it was for, and the fact that those plants were put there for the public to use and to learn about. So I think a lot of it is, like, for me, what was really important for me is for people to learn about the plants, about the gifts we've been given by Creator to live in a good way. And also, once we learn, we absolutely need to teach our children, because they are so far from Mother Earth now. They know more about videos and computer things than they know about the plants growing outside their doors. So it's really important. I think the children in my life, I've always taken for little bush walks and shown them what is edible in the bush, what they can make a nice tea out of, and for example, and things like, you know, other things like moss. Moss was the original disposable diaper that did no damage to Mother Earth when it was disposed. When they were finished with the moss as a diaper, it was buried and it went back to Mother Earth in a good way, not poisoning anyone. So there are so many things that can be learned just walking around our city, looking in our parks and seeing what is there, finding out what we can do with that, what the benefits are. And I think also in my city, I've been seeing over the last few years a real resurgence in little gardens, in personal gardens in people's yards. So to me, that is a positive. So children can learn how, and adults also can learn how to plant their own food, to grow their own food. They find out that the taste is so much more full than buying a tomato from your yard. Tastes so much better than one out of a grocery store that has been grown without the benefit of sun and air and the nutrients from natural soil. And I've met people who, on tasting something grown out of a garden, are astonished at the difference in the taste. And also, there are so many recalls now with a lot of the food that is mass produced, that we need to start thinking about how to look after our health in a better way. And I think this whole project was about sharing that kind of knowledge much more broadly. And in this project, this Welcome to This Place, we work together across the nation, and making those connections were vitally important in many ways. One, that a toolkit is developed to help each other, or whoever wants to participate in this way, they can look at the toolkit, find a way to activate their local parks, what they can do to make them more welcoming, more beneficial, and spending time in them, like encouraging organizations, schools, companies. Have your meetings in a park. Why stay inside? Go outside. We spend so little time outside where we belong that we need to have something to bring us out there. In Winnipeg, I think you see the same picture as I do. Us walking down the street in a little parade in Winnipeg with all those people behind, and Leah with her little water walkers, who, it was a very, very, very hot day, and they all had spray bottles and they kept everybody cool, and they felt like they were doing a really good job, which they were. And also many of these children were from immigrant communities. And I know often when people immigrate, I don't know, it's got to be one of the most difficult things to do in your life, is to change your entire country, your entire surroundings. But even though these people are coming to a different country, we need to remember that a lot of these people in the countries they came from may not have had the kinds of services that we take for granted. So their knowledge about Mother Earth and what we can do in a beneficial way is very often deeper than many of our knowledges when we haven't spent that time out on the land. So that, to me, that's a great benefit. And I think ways to keep it happening, that's something that I think all of us are concerned with, is to keep people engaged in continual use of the park. So it's not just, you know, a one-time thing. We have to redress this frequently. So hold celebrations, hold gatherings. They don't have to be formal or highly organized. They just have to be something that bring community out. Serve cold lemonade in the park in the summertime, and bring people out to mingle, to learn who their neighbors are, meet them. And once you meet your neighbors, your whole neighborhood becomes a friendlier place to live and a more comfortable place for you, for your children, and for everyone who abides there. I think, let's see.
Val, I think it's so incredible. You know, something that I really learned from this project is, as MABELLEarts, we've been working for a long time, we've grown, but Welcome to This Place reminded me that it's easy for just a small group of people to really bring people back into the park. And I think what you were saying about connecting to Mother Earth in the way you were talking about that, I think that's often a tension in our park systems, is there can be a feeling that the park is a place for nature to thrive and that humans shouldn't interfere with that. But the work that you did in Winnipeg really showed people that they have a place in that nature, that they're meant to be there too. And with yeah, exactly. And with that thought in mind, I'm going to introduce our audience to the video that we're going to play. This video was created by artists in Winnipeg, and you'll see the credits on at the end, but also was put together by my colleague Karen Q, our managing director at MABELLEarts, and I hope you enjoy it.
Thank you.
Oh, and also now's the time. If you have a question, burning or not, now's the time to put it in, because we'll start doing some questions after the video. And I would be completely remiss if I didn't speak to the incredible partnerships that blossomed around this project, especially with our friends from Spence Neighborhood Association and Art City. Spence had a vision. Spence does incredible work in Winnipeg, working with the city to revitalize vacant lots. And what they were starting to realize was they had done all this incredible work making these lots accessible to the public, places for people to hang out, but they could actually be walked through in a continuous way to get around the city. And so those signs that you see in the video are wayfinding signage. Hold on. That's I know is our music from Vancouver, which you will also find out about if you go to this new website we're unveiling today. But anyway, and Rachel Schappert from Art City did some incredible work with Val, with community members to make these signs that show ways through the neighborhood, but also speak to the incredible plants in the different parks. So what an amazing project. Thanks, Val.
It was wonderful, and thank you for inviting me into it.
Okay. So now, do we have any questions? What's the average population in that area? Okay, that's a question for Val, I guess.
Gosh, you know, I don't know off the top of my head, but I can Google it. Give me a minute and get back to me. I'll find it.
Any other questions out there?
It's coming.
Okay. So, oh, hold on.
700,000. Population 700,000 in 2018.
Here's a question. Here's a question. I think it's a great question. Oh yeah, there's some questions for you now, Val. There's just maybe a bit of a delay. There's two really beautiful questions here. One is, how can we incorporate intercultural learning in the parks with newcomers? Maybe you want to tackle that, and then I could speak to that a little bit too.
Well, go out and meet people and find them and invite them. I don't know of a simpler way. There are newcomers that come in now on a regular basis. And imagine yourself being in a strange place, and how lovely it would be if a neighbor came out and invited you to come to a gathering at a park and to meet your other neighbors and actually did welcome you to their place.
I would also add to that, our project at Mabel, something that's been really important has been inviting artists to be in on the project from its early stages, whose cultural backgrounds and practices match up with the community members in the neighborhood. So for us, our programming at Mabel has had a really strong focus on the Middle Eastern and African diaspora, working with artists who come from that tradition and background and are bringing those cultural practices into the community, because obviously that's what people want to see and what they know. So that's been really popular at Mabel. The other thing I would say is that cooking has been a really incredible intercultural platform for people to get to know each other, much like art is. Cooking is a way to really quickly show the flavor of where you come from. It's a place where a lot of particularly women have huge skills that they're often excited to share. So that's been another really important thing for us.
Fun, food, and friends.
Oh, thank you. Okay, this next question this is another one, maybe Val, if you want to head it off, and then I could add to it if you want. Yes. Val, how would you characterize the interactions and discussion between newcomers and Indigenous folk?
Let's see. Well, when people get the opportunity to meet, I think until you meet people and if you don't know anything about them, when you actually meet someone, you find out that they have so much in common with you, as we all do across Mother Earth. we all have commonalities that we can then dialogue around.
And then I would add, particularly in Vancouver. So in Vancouver, we were lucky enough to bring a team of young people from Mabel to collaborate with Vancouver artists and community members. And that was an incredible experience in watching that dialogue unfold. Because it was a smaller group and a more intensive coming together, I witnessed a lot of really incredible dialoguing around actually quite difficult conversations around missing and murdered Aboriginal women, and the important, what has been lost and what is being regained, happening again while people were busy with their hands, which I think looking at the Vancouver project will, once we get over to the toolkit, we'll show you a little bit of where you can find information about that. Their project was really about looking at traditional handwork as a way to kind of spark sometimes difficult conversations. So I hope that that answers your question. And now we have another question, which maybe I'll take this one, Val, which was, how did you promote the initiative and get the word out to the community? Something that really struck me about this project was it was incredibly easy to engage partners. And I don't know if I would always say that across the board about our work, but in the case of this project, I actually think people in the settlement world are hitting almost a crisis point. The number of people they're seeing, the needs are so great. There are people in shelter right now hoping that they can stay in the country, and offering things for those folks to do was welcomed across the board of the project. And really, in the case of Winnipeg, some of the folks who took part in that final event, I think we'd called them like 2 days before. So that really was a lesson to me, that to not be shy to pick up the phone. And we talk about that a ton in the toolkit. That's something that Maggie did a beautiful job writing up. And then we had a lot of conversation about. Here's another question. Thank you for your questions. This is amazing.
Oh, can I add to that, Leah?
Yeah.
I think the small community art organizations, because they already know the community and they already have a relationship, are a great way to introduce people and get them doing things together.
Agreed. The next question is, how did you promote the initiative and get the word out to the, oh no, I did that one. Sorry. Where's the one? Funding. So yes, funding. We talk, these questions are great because I have to say, so far, all of this is addressed in our digital resource. Yay, Maggie, yay, us. Yes, we did get some government funding. We got a grant from Canadian Heritage, and there's links to that granting portfolio in our digital resource. You can learn more about it there. We also seek funding from a range of private and public funders. So, and for us as an arts organization, we're also accessing Arts Council dollars on each level. But if you're interested in funding and want to know more, there's definitely resources for you. And also, we're always around to talk more if you'd like. Okay, take more in a bit.
And I think companies and large corporations can participate in this too, because the people who are coming in are future clients.
Yep, agreed. Agreed. We're going to take a pause on questions and we'll let some more funnel in. And now it's my great pleasure to turn it over to my very dear friend and colleague, Maggie Hutchison, who did the writing for the digital resource and also developed and implemented an evaluation strategy that ran through the project from beginning to end. Thanks for being here, Maggie.
Thank you, Leah. And yeah, it's very exciting to see these questions come in because, as Leah said, they're all addressed in the toolkit that we've created. So we'll get to that very quickly. But yeah, evaluation was a really important part of Welcome to This Place. And, you know, Val spoke really eloquently about the power of the project that she worked on in Winnipeg and the kind of community building legacy and importance of that kind of work. It's important to tell the stories of projects like this and just to collectively reflect on how they're building community, how they're deepening our sense of place, what they mean to participants. So when we work on community-based art projects, we want to evaluate for a number of reasons. Collecting evaluative material can give us information that we need to tailor our work to specific participants, and of course to course correct when we need to see what's working and what isn't working as well and can be improved. It also gives funders information. For example, we can make sure we hit our participation targets. And it tells us what we need to learn and how we can learn more from each other. So our evaluation of Welcome to This Place took a few different forms. We did gather written commentary. We conducted quite in-depth post-project interviews. Obviously, we did a lot of documenting as well, the video and photography. And this past August 2018, just as most of the local projects were wrapping up, we held a national gathering in Toronto. And that was very exciting. That gathering was an opportunity for artists and community leaders to bring their energies and skills to the final Toronto Welcome to This Place event, which was a participatory night market in Broadacres Park. And you could learn more about that on the website. And we also took time during that national gathering to evaluate our projects and to share resources and learn from each other. And so the toolkit that we're launching today, that we're sharing with you, is a result of that evaluative process. And it offers practical advice gleaned from many years of on-the-ground experience working in community arts and in parks. So much of it gleaned from MABELLEarts' many years of experience. And it was designed for artists, for park professionals as well, and also for funders, so for many different stakeholders in this kind of work. And we think it contains really important tips and information for all of those groups. In the toolkit, you'll find tips on fundraising, how to design a project, program planning, evaluation, and a lot more. And I think Leah's going to lead you through the functionality of the toolkit now, and I'm sure we'll get more questions out of that.
Yeah, and oh, hold on. I'm coming back. There I go. Okay. Sorry, everybody. We have a few more questions. One was, were we able to provide honoraria or wages to workshop leaders? And the answer is across the board, yes. As an arts organization, we were predominantly hiring artists to lead in the work. And so everyone was paid. That's at the center of our work. That's very important. But I also think this question is pointing to another question, which is how are community members compensated for their time? And certainly that's something that we're passionate about at MABELLEarts. So the young people involved in this project were actually with us full-time through the summer as staff members at MABELLEarts. It's an incredible adventure to triple your staff number with young people ages 14 to 18. I highly recommend it. And for us, wages and honoraria going back to community is always been a kind of pillar of what we do. And let's see if there's anything else question-wise. Sorry, guys. Can we move from welcoming newcomers to green spaces to taking care? That's a great question. So Ambika asks, how can we move from welcoming newcomers to green spaces to taking care of these spaces? And certainly that's been the MABELLEarts story. For us, taking over and transforming the Mabel Park is a daily effort, something that community members have been at the center of from the beginning. And over the next few years, actually thanks to some funding from the Greater Toronto Airport Authority, we're going to be exploring more in depth how the need to care for our park can spark economic development in the neighborhood, which is something very new for us. In some ways not, because hiring community has been a priority of our organization from the beginning, but really looking at it, and probably looking at it with the same rigor in which we approached Welcome to This Place, is something I'm really excited about. And then I think that's maybe, let me see. Oh, here. How do you encourage young people to participate as we see more of older people volunteering or participating? Oh, that's interesting. For us, again, going back to that story of hiring those young people, we make it a priority to hire youth, because in our community, we were seeing that the young people who were the most deeply engaged in our work were also under a lot of pressure to go out and get jobs. In some cases, they were the most employable person in their household. And so we knew that if we didn't offer them paid employment, we were going to lose them. And so we accessed funding through Service Canada to hire them, and have been doing that now for the past, we've done it consistently through our 11 years, but we've done it as a more intensive program over the past 3 years, incorporating post-secondary prep and matching people up with mentors. And that's been a real joy of our work over the past few years.
So I think there was one, Leah, so Melissa was asking, she says, I'm interested in learning the kinds of applications you use for videos generated from these events and activities. Is it a tool to summarize what happened, or could it also be used to promote future events, extend past the life of a single event? Thoughts? Do you have thoughts of other interesting applications of these kinds of videos?
Exactly right. Was it Amanda? Melissa, you are right. Of course, these videos have broader application, and this website for us was also a way of showing what's possible with this kind of work. Video is such an incredible tool. It kind of makes you feel like you're there. The challenge of our project was we wanted to do the filmmaking locally because we wanted to support local artists, but then we took all the footage back and edited it so it had a clear voice, each video. And I think Karen deserves a medal for how she was able to bring all that video together to create these concise, evocative pieces that definitely have application beyond just reporting back about the project. Yeah, please.
Unmute myself. And I would also say we've really emphasized in the toolkit, which we will get to, but we've emphasized the importance of documenting this kind of work, and provided a shot list for the types of things you might be looking for to document, and that can help with both evaluation and really reconsidering your practice and learning from it, but also of course with sharing the work with others. So just wanted to add that.
Cool. So now I think we're going to talk a little bit about the toolkit. I want to check where we're at time-wise. We've still got oodles of time. How fun. So this toolkit, I just want to also say, was the labor of many incredible people, both at MABELLEarts and across the country. And so it's my great pleasure to thank and recognize Karen Q, Magoli Samba, Schiffer Cooper, Maggie, Val, and all the photographers, videographers who took, and then of course all the artists whose beautiful work in engagement with community members is seen here. I hope that the website, I mean, I've looked at it so many times now, it's hard for me to say, but my hope is that the website, even in its design and in the photos, gives you a sense of the kind of care that was taken across the country to make these projects successful. Okay, so we're scrolling down. And I think Maggie said it really well, what this website is for and who it is for. And you'll find within it, so when we were talking about that question of intercultural collaboration, and particularly the kinds of conversations between newcomers and Indigenous folks, you'll see a lot of the outcomes in our project archive, which takes you through each city's project. We've also done a little bit to set the context for why we think this work is important, both based on our own experience, but also based on a bit of a literature review on what's being said and determined about this kind of work. Here's the archive. So you'll see if you click on the city, which maybe we could do, Sean, yeah, let's click on Vancouver. You get a little bit of a sense, and a shout out to our friends at Earth Hand Gleaners who led this project in Vancouver, and a shout out to all the Mabel youth who came on the road with me and learned about weaving and about the history of the land. So that's where you'll get more of a sense of that. And again, you'll see the kind of partnerships that developed, and in some cases developed really quickly, which is something that I think, again, is indicative of where we are right now. In terms of the level of need for projects. I think I've been working with MABELLEarts in the hotels here in Toronto that are housing asylum seekers, and I've seen an incredible leap in terms of how we're servicing their needs. But I think the piece that's still often missing is the how do we have fun together? How do we get to know each other? There's a lot of time spent waiting for approval to be here, waiting for housing, and there's a huge gap that could be filled by art, actually. So now here we are. Oh, here we are at the toolkit. So these beautiful images created by Charlie Young and hundreds of newcomers to Canada living in Halifax. Charlie is an incredible printmaker, and she took 3 picnic tables, large-scale picnic tables, and used the surfaces as a printmaking space, which I adore. They are going to install these permanently into the iSands community garden. iSands is a settlement agency in Halifax doing really innovative work using gardening and food a lot in their settlement process. So we were so proud to partner with them. And again, you'll see in the toolkit, if you click, let's click on fundraising. Maggie's come up with some incredible tips, but we've also included some links of places to look. We've also, as funders are one of our audiences, we've also talked a little bit about the success of specific programs, what from our perspective that kind of investment has yielded. So I hope you find this to be useful. Okay. Yeah, let's scroll down a little bit more. Oh, maybe let's go into evaluation a little bit. And Maggie, do you want to take people through just a little bit what's on there?
Again, these are all, you know, each of these resources, each of these pages tells you about a different phase or aspect of doing this kind of work. So we have a page on evaluation, why it's important, which I already spoke about a bit, and how you might do it, tracking attendance, soliciting feedback throughout, listening for comments as you're working, and arts-based evaluation, which we've also given links to some really great examples of arts-based evaluation from our friends at Jumblies as well. So also team reflections. We've really tried to lay all of this out in a very practical way so that you can take a look. And of course, this can continue to grow. So also to say that we know there are many experts probably joining us in the webinar right now who would have lots to say about any of these aspects of the resource and could share knowledge as well. So we see this as a beginning of some knowledge sharing in this field.
Absolutely. We want to hear from you. So if there's something that's missing in the toolkit, if there's something that would help you that's not there, if there's a way that we can help you, please be in touch with us, because definitely that's something we're passionate about. And we really see this toolkit as the beginning of a much larger process of thinking through how MABELLEarts might help other places do work that makes sense for them in their community context. I would like to answer this question from Claire Nolan, if that's okay. And the question is, did you find that there was preconceived notions amongst newcomers regarding the safety of parks? And I would say that yes, there was actually. Particularly, the work in Vancouver was centered mainly in the downtown east side, and Earth Hand Cleaners is very much at home and a part of the downtown east side. And newcomers who were very new to Vancouver, who were either living in the downtown east side or visiting the downtown east side, were quite concerned about it. And I would say what was so powerful is that artists and community members from the downtown east side were there as part of the project, so they could speak to their own impressions of their neighborhood. And I think that that's really what we're talking about when we talk about this work, is setting a stage where all kinds of people can come together and meet across differences, whether they be real or perceived. So I think that's really at the center of what we're trying to do.
And yeah, I'll just jump in and as we, thanks everybody for sharing your questions, and we had some great information shared about funding in Manitoba from Daria, so it's really wonderful that we're using this opportunity to share knowledge amongst each other. Our webinars are also aimed at municipalities and other park professionals, so we also just maybe Maggie was just going to talk a little bit more in depth about some of our some of the resources are advice for artists for working with municipalities and cultural institutions and vice versa. So maybe Maggie, you could take us just through a little bit of some of those points.
Sure. Yeah. So that's, I mean, it takes so many different players to make these projects come to life. And what we found is that, you know, they're very different. Artists work differently than large agencies, municipalities, etc. So we've created, there are 2 different pages in the toolkit around working in partnership. One is called Creating Partnerships, and that's advice for artists on how to work with municipalities and large institutions, how to build those partnerships through face-to-face conversations, how to show your work and show the power of it, what you do. And to recognize that you may work quite differently as an artist and on quite different timelines than larger institutions. So how do you do that work well? How do you partner well? Then we have a different page that focuses on working with artists. So this is tips for park professionals like yourselves, for municipalities, large agencies, larger cultural institutions around how to work effectively with artists and support artists to do the work that they're good at doing. So lending institutional muscle. There may be a lot of contributions that people working in these larger institutions don't even initially think of as important, like helping artists move through a permitting process, or offering storage space, or even offering publicity or giving credence with your institutional name to the project. So we really outline some of the ways that these partnerships can work well, and that artists and larger institutions can support one another. And particularly, we focus on recognizing the different ways of working and the different timelines that artists may be working on versus larger institutions.
So we've had a few more questions coming in, Leah, so maybe I can ask you a few more of our questions. So we had a question about advice for artists, or this might be for Maggie or Leah. So what advice would you give to artists to encourage them to undertake arts programming in underserved communities?
Me? Okay. What advice? Well, I would, and of course this is coming from my own experience and perspective, and that would be to be in it for the long haul, to build trust, to understand what's going on and who's there, to always think about who might be not there and why, to keep it fun and exciting for you as an artist as well. I think that's really, really important, because to have the staying power to be working in one place for a long time, certainly for me, my own artistic sensibility and interest being in the mix has been really important. And I would say at this point, I can't really separate out. I feel so connected to the people at Mabel doing this work together that I can't really separate out what's my impulse and what's inspired by their impulses. But I think that's how you know it's really working. Yeah, so that's what I'd say. Maggie, do you have anything to add, or maybe Val? Oh, demute Val.
Hi. I think about keeping people engaged. I think we can't do these things one time. We have to repeat them on a regular basis, and that to me is the most critical. We can't just do a hit and run. We have to continue to engage community, because many communities, like in the core of Winnipeg, that's a very transient area. So there may not be somebody left in 3 years to reintroduce people, because people have grown, they found other places to live and moved on in their lives. So we have to continually engage the community as it changes. and in a positive, fun, uplifting way, introducing people, getting them together to celebrate, to do art, to create, and find their connections in that way.
This beautiful photo that you're looking at, am I unmuted? Was taken by Sharon Callis, who I just realized we haven't included her in our photo credits. It's anyone who's built a website knows the devil is in the details, as they say. But this is such a dear photo to me. Sharon's work is very beautiful. For the past number of years, she's been a caretaker for 2 parks in Vancouver, where she encourages community members to get involved in using the plants in ways that are very old, that create cloth. And now as she's looking at working with the salmon industry to make leather from what's left from that industry, which is really, really special work. So anyway, it's lovely to see this image. And if you have another burning question, now is the time.
All right, I think we've got another one.
Great.
So how do you, Ambika asks, how do you balance municipalities' concern for carrying capacity of urban parks to people's social needs of visiting them?
I don't know. How do you balance that? I don't know. I guess your question is there ever too many people? And I can't speak to that from a municipal side, but I would say that hundreds of people gather in the Mabelle Park, and so far so good. And certainly I know that that's a tension. It's a tension I'm less familiar with because I don't work in the parks sector. But I think that what we're finding is that people really want to be able to use their parks. They really want to be involved in what happens in their parks, and they want their parks to be places where that can serve some of their needs. And certainly that's something that we've found over the past 3 years of our project. A kind of guiding question for us at MABELLEarts has been, what is a park? Because really we've seen, particularly with our work in Broadacres, that parks are well positioned to solve pretty big social problems, particularly among asylum seeker communities. And Maggie's just reminding me, and this is so important, we've also drafted a series of policy recommendations. First time I've ever done that. That was a really interesting process. On Maggie's good counsel, we've developed 3 policy recommendations around this question. So that is also part of what you'll find in the digital resource if you want to take a peek. And certainly from our perspective and from our experience, we haven't encountered a time when there's too many people in the park.
Could I speak to that a little?
Please, please.
To me, that's kind of the same thing, because if you get more people into the parks, people feel an ownership and a belonging, and they will help in keeping that park in shape. Like what we did in Winnipeg before we started a piece of work, the first thing we did was make sure the park was clean, and then do what we were doing. So we looked after the land that was looking after us. And I think that's not just an Indigenous thing. I think that's across the land and across all peoples. So the more people we get into parks, the more the parks are cared for in a good way.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Val. And thank you, Leah, and thank you, Maggie, and thank you to everybody for participating today. We're gonna wrap things up. I feel like the conversation is just starting. You know, that it's been an hour, but we're really starting to get into things. So I encourage you to keep asking questions. We're just almost at the end of our time.
Can I say one more thing? Yeah. All these questions that are coming in at the end, I really do feel are answered in the, or at least alluded to in the digital resource, particularly this thing about values. So how organizations with very different values can work together. I love that question. I hope we've answered it. Please be in touch with me and let me know what you think of our answer.